It's one of China's most modern megacities, known for its futuristic skyline layered highways, and high-speed rail gliding through apartment blocks. But hidden behind the glass and steel of Chongqing is a different kind of structure. A maze of tightly packed alleys, makeshift rooftops, and entire neighborhoods the city never quite finished. Or perhaps never meant to. Welcome to China's largest slum. In this episode, we explore a side of Chongqing that rarely appears on maps where urban growth and poverty exist just meters apart. Number 1. Slum in the heart of Chongqing. You've probably heard of Chongqing for its famously spicy hot pot, or the internet's fascination with its so-called handsome men, a city of heat, height, and hype. The kind of place that trends easily photogenic and fast-moving. But there's another Chongqing one that rarely makes it into postcards or tourist feeds. Nowhere is China's urban transformation more striking than in Chongqing, the largest city in the upper reaches of the Yangtze River, home to roughly 7 million people. Once a rusting river port left behind by the booming cities along the eastern coast, Chongqing has been undergoing a dramatic rebirth. Over the past decade, hundreds of high-rise apartment towers have risen from its deep red soil, and new bridges now stretch across its muddy riverbanks. Today, the skyline resembles a mainland version of Hong Kong, dense vertical, and still growing. The construction boom shows no signs of slowing down. In the northern suburbs, bulldozers continue to flatten forested hills and carve through green valleys, feeding the endless appetite of real estate developers. Near the airport, workers are laying down tracks for what will eventually be a 9-line monorail system. And in the heart of the old city, demolition crews with pickaxes are tearing down clusters of aging, grimy slums in the name of modernization. But beneath all this progress lies a quieter, harsher reality. As the towers climb higher, entire neighborhoods just next door remain untouched, overcrowded, and crumbling. These areas, often called urban villages, are home to hundreds of thousands of rural migrants who moved here hoping for a better life. They work in construction sites, restaurants, massage parlors. But without a city hukou, they're excluded from formal housing and public services. As of early 2025, more than 270,000 people in Chongqing live in unregistered makeshift settlements. These slums are not remnants of the past, they're part of the city's living fabric. With cracked walls, exposed wires, tin roofs, and improvised drainage, they stand just steps away from glass towers and smart infrastructure. But worlds apart. Here in the shadow of rapid development, another Chongqing still exists, one built not from steel and ambition, but from the quiet persistence of those the city forgot to include. Number 2. Dangerous living conditions. From the highway, it all looks like seamless rows of silver towers rising through the haze, monorails gliding past office blocks and highways threading between megamalls. But tilt the camera slightly, and another city comes into view. One that doesn't stretch upward, but inward. Dense, weathered, and nearly invisible unless you know where to look. Just beyond the skyline of steel and glass lies a network of aging buildings, narrow alleys, and forgotten infrastructure. These so-called urban villages are hidden in plain sight, surrounded by luxury condos, modern transit hubs, and shopping centers. And they exist as if time simply left them behind. Their buildings are packed tightly together, patched with tarpaulin and mismatched bricks, many standing on the edge of collapse. Inside these neighborhoods, services most city dwellers take for granted are barely functioning or completely absent. Power lines hang low, tangled in tree branches and across balconies. clean water comes from outdoor taps shared by entire blocks. Toilets are few, often shared by multiple families, and sewage runs openly through shallow concrete drains. Waste collection is inconsistent if it happens at all. After rain, these narrow lanes flood with dirty water that seeps into homes. Rodents roam freely across rooftops and alleyways. According to a 2024 study by Tsinghua University and the Chongqing Center for Disease Control, rat sightings in informal housing zones are over 5 times more frequent than in regulated residential areas. The same study found that more than 60% of households lacked safe food storage, increasing the risk of contamination and illness. However, just one street away, monorails glide smoothly through residential towers with rooftop gardens. Investment in Chongqing's urban core has soared, but the benefits have not reached the margins. As of early 2025, more than 270,000 people still live in unregistered makeshift settlements across the city, largely left out of official infrastructure plans. Progress here is easy to see from above. On the ground, it's a very different story. But this is only the surface. Keep watching as we go deeper into the layers of a city divided. Number 3. The reality of informal employment. It doesn't take a wrong turn to find this other side of the city. Just a pause, a step beyond the boulevards where things shine. There, the symmetry of Chongqing's new skyline gives way to something older, quieter, and far more intimate. Step away from the polished skyline of Chongqing, and a very different city begins to unfold. One that doesn't rise vertically but spreads quietly along narrow alleys and in between forgotten courtyards. Here, you won't find glossy towers or digital facades. Instead, the horizon is filled with modest, low-rise apartment blocks built decades ago, their paint faded by sun and soot, their stairwells worn smooth by generations of tenants. Rooftops serve as storage gardens, workshops, whatever a household needs. Power lines droop above tangled like vines, and the sidewalks double as kitchens, markets, and playgrounds. These neighborhoods may not be marked on tourist maps, but they are home to thousands. Most are rural migrants who arrived over the past 2 decades, not chasing ambition, but answering the quiet call of necessity. A better income, a way out, a future for their children. But city life has its own thresholds. Without an official hukou, they remain outside many public systems. Healthcare comes at full cost. Public schools are out of reach, and even renting a legal apartment is a challenge wrapped in paperwork. Still, this exclusion isn't the result of malice or deliberate neglect. Rather, it reflects how cities like Chongqing are racing to expand faster than their ability to integrate. A phenomenon described by scholars at Renmin University as an administrative lag. In this gap, over 70% of migrant workers find themselves in informal jobs, without contracts, without insurance, often without protection. Number 4. Women's double burden. Here in Chongqing's informal neighborhoods, most women work outside any official system. Their days begin early and end long after dark, spent rinsing dishes behind roadside eateries, picking through discarded cardboard to sell by the kilogram, or selling breakfast buns from folding tables that disappear before enforcement arrives. These jobs offer no fixed income, no legal protection, and no fallback when things go wrong. Only the promise of surviving today to try again tomorrow. According to a citywide survey by the Chongqing Women's Federation, published in the 4th quarter of the year 2023, more than 80% of migrant women in the municipality are employed informally. That means no contracts, no health insurance, no social protections, and no safeguards in the event of workplace injury, illness, or sudden job loss. But the work doesn't stop once they return home. Behind closed doors, another layer of labor begins, unpaid, uncounted, and just as demanding. These women are caretakers, cooks, tutors, nurses. They raise children, look after aging parents, manage household expenses, and carry emotional weight for everyone around them, often without rest or recognition. In a field interview conducted in early 2024 by the community group Homeground, a mother in Yuzhong district said softly, "I earn the money, I spend it. I cook it, and I wash it. But it's like none of it really counts. There are no weekends here, no paid leave, no time to recover. Fatigue isn't a moment. It becomes a rhythm, physical, emotional, and quietly constant." Their stories may not fit neatly into urban planning reports, but they are part of the city's living rhythm. Steady, often unseen, and always adapting. Number 5. Social stereotypes about women. In places where walls are thin and the state is distant, silence becomes a form of survival, and for many women here, it's the only shield they have. Within the aging neighborhoods, tucked between Chongqing's vertical expansion, vulnerability takes on quieter forms. Homes are small, often shared by multiple generations or tenants. Streets are narrow and dimly lit. In this kind of environment, where oversight is minimal and privacy is a luxury, women are more likely to face domestic abuse or harassment behind closed doors with little recourse. The infrastructure here is not just broken, it's absent. There are no women's shelters nearby, no trained counselors stationed in the district. Legal aid, if it exists at all, remains out of reach for unregistered migrants who fear not just shame, but eviction or job loss. In a place where even a police report requires a valid city hukou. Many choose not to speak up at all. But beyond the missing safety nets, there is something deeper, a quiet culture of resignation. For many women, here struggle is inherited, not chosen. Raised with the belief that hardship is part of a woman's duty. They endure mistreatment not because they accept it, but because they have few imagined alternatives. Worse still, society often frames them in narrow terms as the tired worker, the silent mother, the poor woman with bad luck. These labels become boxes. And over time, even the women themselves begin to believe that they belong inside them. Breaking free from violence is not just about protection. It's about dismantling the quiet stories that tell women they deserve less. Number 6. City trap. The city sparkles from a distance, and for many, that's all it takes. For generations of rural families on the outskirts of Chongqing, the city has stood as a symbol of escape, of ambition, of something better. The gleaming towers, the bright shopping centers, the images shared on phones and television. All of it suggests progress, opportunity, and a future waiting to be claimed. So they come, men, women, and entire families chasing what they believe is their chance to change their lives. But what waits on the other side is rarely what was promised. Without an urban hukou, China's strict household registration, new arrivals are quickly confronted with limits. No access to public schools, no affordable housing, no health insurance. Jobs are informal wages, unstable, and services out of reach. The dream of moving forward becomes the daily reality of barely staying afloat. Many end up in the city's slums, dense, unregulated settlements, tucked just out of sight from the new Chongqing. They live next to wealth, but not within it. Across the river, empty luxury apartments rise into the sky. Here, 10 people might share a single kitchen, and roofs are patched with plastic sheets. By the year 2030, nearly 500 million people across China may be living in this in-between state. Legally present in cities, but structurally excluded from their benefits. Experts call it a growing underclass. For many, it feels more like a trap. The city promised everything. And that promise, wrapped in lights and glass, was easy to believe. But for those who arrived with hope, staying means learning to survive with less and accepting that here, progress doesn't include everyone. The challenge of urbanization. In Chongqing, inequality doesn't stretch across the outskirts. It stacks vertically inside the very architecture of the city. This is no longer the old story of the poor pushed to the edges and the wealthy pulled toward the center. In today's Chongqing, the rich and the poor often live just blocks apart, or even inside the same complex. But while one group enjoys keycard elevators and filtered air, the other navigates crumbling stairwells and shared water taps. The city may appear cohesive from the outside, but daily life here is separated by invisible floors. Not just in height, but in access opportunity and recognition. The promise of urbanization was once simple: more jobs, better lives, shared prosperity. But what we see now is a more complicated reality. The same monorail line that connects business towers glides over communities still lacking sewage systems. Luxury apartments stand half-empty, marketed as investment properties, while low-income families crowd into retrofitted rooms with no legal address. These aren't outliers, they are structural features of how the city has grown. The imbalance isn't only economic, it's emotional. It shapes how people see themselves and what they believe they deserve. A woman working 2 jobs and caring for aging parents might live across the street from a smart tower. She cleans every morning a building whose front door she'll never use. Children grow up seeing wealth just out of reach, but without a clear path toward it. Over time, this proximity without mobility creates something deeper than inequality. Resignation. Chongqing, like many megacities, is a place of dazzling transformation, but it also holds a mirror to the modern urban dilemma. Development without integration, growth without equity, and vision without inclusion. The slums here are not mistakes, they are symptoms. Not of failure, but of imbalance. And as the skyline climbs higher, the question becomes harder to ignore. What kind of city are we building if so many are left behind at its foundation? 8. Social consequences. The story of Chongqing's urban slums doesn't stand in isolation. It's one thread in a wider fabric of systemic imbalance, where contradictions across China's cities are becoming harder to ignore. Among the most pressing is the crisis of youth unemployment. As of early 2025, the jobless rate among urban youth aged 16 to 24 has reached nearly 15%, more than double the general urban rate. This figure reflects not a lack of education, but a misalignment between what the economy produces and what young people are trained to expect. Many graduates find themselves stuck in temporary jobs, gig work, or long job hunts, despite holding degrees once considered a guarantee of upward mobility. At the same time, the country faces the paradox of housing oversupply. Between 65 and 80 million apartments nationwide remain empty, uninhabited relics of a property boom that outpaced real demand. Entire residential towers stand dark, speculative investments that have never housed a single family. Meanwhile, low-income workers, rural migrants, and informal laborers continue to struggle with access to legal housing. They are priced out, shut out, or held back by systems like the hukou registration that restrict their eligibility for public services. Together, these two crises expose a deeper flaw in China's current development model. The economy builds buildings faster than it builds stability. It produces homes no one lives in and graduates no one hires. Cities like Chongqing grow taller and brighter, but the foundations remain fragile. Left unaddressed, this imbalance risks creating a vast urban underclass. aliens who live within city borders but remain excluded from the systems that define full citizenship. Scholars estimate that by the year 2030, as many as 500 million people could find themselves caught in this limbo. Educated but underemployed, Mao housed but insecure, present but officially invisible. When the economy leaves behind the very people it was built to elevate, what we're left with is not just inequality, it's a crisis of purpose. And in places like Chongqing, that purpose must now be reimagined, not just re-engineered. Why are they still staying? When the city doesn't open its doors, people learn to live in the cracks, not out of choice, but because that's all that's left. Tucked behind glass towers and shopping malls, Chongqing's informal neighborhoods are home to thousands who didn't come here to stay, but never found a way to leave. The rooms are small, often windowless. The walls are cracked, the pipes leak, and shared toilets sit at the end of damp, flickering hallways. Still, the rent between 500 and 1,000 yuan a month makes it bearable, at least for now. For many migrants, these areas are not ideal. But compared to living on the outskirts, hours away from work, or paying 3 times more for a legal apartment, they might never qualify for the decision. And feels obvious. Here they're close to construction sites, restaurants, delivery hubs. Jobs that pay little, but require presence. Losing proximity often means losing income altogether. It's not just about affordability, it's about access. Without an urban hukou, most newcomers can't sign formal leases, register for public services, or apply for subsidized housing. Legal options shrink, and what's left is a patchwork of informal rentals, shared courtyards, and makeshift dwellings built into the city's blind spots. Over time, these spaces begin to feel familiar, even if they were never meant to be permanent. The streets are noisy, the buildings unregulated, and power cuts are common. But people know their neighbors. They've memorized which vendor gives extra tofu, which alley floods during rain, which landlord knocks too early. It's not comfort, it's adaptation. Even the food here, as bold as it is bizarre. Snake meat. Duck head chicken intestines tells a story of people who've learned to make the most of little. A story of compromise more than pride. In a city racing ahead, not everyone can catch up. For many, staying in the slums isn't chasing less, it's choosing what's still possible. Not all cities reveal themselves through landmarks. Some speak through silence, through the stories that rarely make it to postcards or headlines. Chongqing is a city of contrasts. Between concrete towers and rusted rooftops, between monorails in the sky, and families surviving in the margins, between promises of progress and the quiet persistence of those left waiting. These are not forgotten people. They are just not often looked at. Cities don't break people, but they do ask them to bend. And somewhere between bending and breaking, a kind of quiet dignity takes root. One that deserves to be seen, to be heard, not out of pity, but out of respect. If this story stayed with you, if it made you see Chongqing in a different light, we invite you to support this journey. Please like the video and subscribe to NVL Travel Documentary to help us continue exploring the stories that live behind the skyline.